Hello and welcome to the Early Years Summit with me, Kathy Brodie. In this summit we're exploring speech, language and communication, and today we are discussing teaching internationally in multilingual schools, and I'm just delighted to be joined by Jess Gosling. Jess was trained in the UK and has taught in 5 countries over a career of more than 10 years. Her passion has remained within the early years, and as an advocate for the pedagogy of child-led, play-based learning through childhood. She's worked in the UK and internationally with young English as an additional language learners. She's published for the Times Educational Supplement for the TES and is currently working on her second action research project. She loves international teaching so much she has set up several platforms to support others. And Jess is also writing an honest guide on how to become an international teacher. This is so interesting. A very warm welcome to the Early Years Summit, Jess Gosling.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Well, thank you for taking time out to come on, and of course, a time difference and everything else. How absolutely brilliant. But let's start at the very beginning. Could you just give us an overall, a summary of your teaching experience and what you've been doing, please?
So post-qualification, I was 2 years in Hertfordshire on supply, but also full-time in a school in year 2. I was very fortunate to be part of a nursery there and a little reception. So that was my first experience of early years. Then I moved out to Egypt, reception teacher for 2 years in Egypt during the revolution. And then we moved on to Vietnam because we needed to. But it was a fantastic move. Again, 2 more years, I headed up year 1 in Vietnam. I took some time out to raise my daughter, but during that time I studied a master's in early years and also set up a little business, parent-child business in early years, play-based learning. And then we decided I wanted to go back into school, so I returned and I went to Taipei. It's now, I think, 2.5 years in Taipei, so 1 year in year 1 and then 2.5 years now a year and a half in reception.
Wow, that is just fantastic. I mean, wow, what fantastic countries to be in as well. Are they all sort of under the EYFS then? Have they got a similar curriculum to the English curriculum?
Yeah, they're completely British international schools. So it's literally like transplanting a school abroad. Yeah.
So how have you found teaching internationally then? I mean, there must be obviously challenges, but there must be benefits as well. What's it been like?
There are a lot of benefits, and I think that's why I'm such an advocate for people trying it. After my time in the UK, I did find it very challenging, and I never hide that about my situation there. I found the workload was very demanding. I was exhausted most of the time. The weekend, I was catching up on sleep. I always loved travel, so it was kind of in my mind when I did the PGC that we would go out and try international teaching. But then once we went out together, I married my husband just before we moved. It was just, we couldn't go back. The work-life balance is great. There are meetings still, and there is paperwork, but it's no way to the level of the UK. I get an awful lot of PPA compared to the UK, sometimes double or 3 times as much. The work, also the salary works out really well because we don't have to pay taxes. Well, the UK taxes, we pay them here and they're reimbursed. So it's really great saving potential. Prior to COVID, amazing travel opportunities, but I'm quite lucky now. I'm in Taiwan, so I can travel around Taiwan. It's still a beautiful country to see. So every holiday we're off traveling somewhere, which is a fantastic. The schools, I've really enjoyed the schools I've been in. Compared to the UK, obviously, a lot of money goes into resourcing the schools. So I pretty much have most things that I could want, and I can order quite easily things I need, which is fantastic. Also staffing, all of us have an LA. Currently in reception, I also have an early years enrichment teacher as well, shared with so we actually have, I have 2.5 staff, in my unit. So yeah, which we all know interactions is the most important thing. So that's another wonderful benefit. I love mixing with other cultures. It's been lovely working with children from other cultures. EAL, obviously I've learned so much about EAL and how to work with them. Also within the society itself, it's fun just going outside. It's fun. You're always seeing something new. You have new opportunities. You can be just a tourist in your own country. So much for you to do at the weekends. Like I could go to the beach or I could go up a mountain. I don't want to make people jealous, but there's just that there is, it's an exciting life. It's adventurous, and also curriculum wise, I've worked within the American curriculum when I subbed for a little while, which was very, very interesting. I've worked with IPC. There's opportunities to work with PYP, the IB program. So you could be flexible about your curriculum, which of course, when you're in England, it's not quite as flexible as that. But even within working within the framework, we kind of devise the curriculum ourselves, because we have to take into account the needs of our children. So if we really want something, or we feel something really works, we can just change it and adapt the intentions, which I think, with how rigid the UK can be, that isn't such an option. I particularly like that side of thing. We don't have Ofsted. We do have some like CIS will come into schools and check, but they're all about school improvement, and that includes improving the well-being of the staff. So it's actually a great it's a great inspection compared to one, putting the staff under the radar. And the community, that's the last point I want to make. When you move abroad, I think a lot of people feel nervous about making friends and contacts. Communities are fabulous. Almost like you make friends quite quickly. People all have similar interests to you because they've come out abroad to teach. And in my first placement especially, I was really good friends with younger people, like going out at night times with younger people, but also holidaying with the nearly retired teachers. It's just I think people really mix, because they're kind of your family. They're the people you rely on. So it's a lovely environment to be in, I feel, working abroad as a teacher. Challenges, though, you are away from home. So, that's a big thing to think about. If you have already a very close network, a very close family, I feel that would be quite difficult to move abroad. Initially, because we've had a daughter abroad as well, we were traveling back every 6 months with our daughter, and now it's almost been a year and a half due to COVID. So this was a bit of a shocker to the system, I feel, for a lot of international teachers, because obviously a big plus is you can travel. It is difficult and you do feel you miss out a bit if friends and family have weddings or special events. You're stuck to their school holidays, so you can't travel back for them. So this is another consideration. As well as making really, really great friends, at some point you are likely to leave, or they are likely to leave. So this can be hard too. Yeah. I have 3 wonderful friends still in Vietnam, which I still keep in a lot of contact with, and we do all the Zoom calls and everything. So you can still keep those friendships, but it's not quite the same as having them with you. I think sometimes language can be a difficulty too when you move abroad initially, if you don't quite know the language, and that does take time to learn. And when you're first thrown into the situation, it can be quite challenging, because especially I think Taiwan's probably had the least level of English when we've moved here, just trying to communicate. But I have found in all 3 countries, people have been really, really open and receptive, and they've tried to communicate with us. And I think because often they're selling you something, it's they'll try harder, and you work it out. And I think that really helps you. So I'm making a challenge now into a positive. I can't help it really, but it makes you more resilient. It gives you a lot of strength and personal growth, and you can't really be meek if you're coming abroad. You've got to put yourself out there. Another challenge might be certain countries don't have, say you love football or hockey. Certainly my husband has experienced this. You may not have those sort of activities that you really enjoy, but you can set them up. That's something I did. Like when I moved to Vietnam, there wasn't any mummy or baby groups in my area whatsoever. So I set that up. And then we started doing play dates, and then that's how that moved across to making a business out of it. So, I do feel there are challenges, certainly, but there's huge amounts of opportunities abroad. I feel you could easily become a writer on the side, or a podcaster, or anything you like, because you have that time, you have that ability, and people have YouTube channels out here. I see that quite a lot with my colleagues. They have the time to put that in,
Yeah. That's actually really intriguing, isn't it? Because as you say, you're working under exactly the same curriculum, and yet you have that time. You're not doing the paperwork, presumably. Where does that time come from then?
Well, what we do have, which I think the UK is moving towards and already has, so you have tapestry and seesaw, I think, in EYFS now, don't you? Which I find amazing. I don't know how people did the job before that. Like seesaw, everything is recorded on there. I'm a seesaw ambassador because I was quite interested in my colleagues kind of made some really, really good things, and I saw them as my daughter was completing the task. So I thought I'd try and see if I could do it myself. So you can just do wonderful things, whereas we send a picture home, then we record the child talking about the picture, which goes to the parent, which, you know, they absolutely love, rather than just the picture. And it's a digital record for them forever. We can record videos and share it. It's an amazing resource. When I first got it, I was a bit snap happy, I admit that. But then you get really confident, you know what to take pictures of and what, you know, what not. And I just feel I have a great record of evidence through Seesaw. And I know that's a big thing in EYFS at the minute in the UK with the change in the framework, you know, requiring less evidence. And I think it's not time consuming whatsoever. I mean, the most that I type up is probably the observations. But planning, I mean, I'm in a wonderful team as well. We plan all together. We plan with a Mandarin teacher too. So she's involved in all those conversations. Yeah. And also the early years enrichment teachers are there. So we can all put in ideas, because I feel, especially with continuous provision, we all see different things. So I may not have noticed something, and then there'll just be an off the cuff comment and be like, right, okay, then we'll move with that with our unit. So yeah, I feel paperwork isn't necessary, quite honestly, the extent. I think your time should be invested 100% with the kids, interacting with them, moving towards adult-led tasks as much as possible. I know we need them, but I do feel that they do learn the most when I go into their play and interact with them.
Yeah. Right, let me just take you on to something you've said there, Jess, about the Mandarin enrichment. So just explain to me how that Mandarin enrichment program works. What's that all about?
Well, it's a completely normal unit. They have their teacher, which is me, but then they have this absolutely wonderful other member of staff who comes in. She comes in 2 mornings currently a week. And so when I'm teaching, she team teaches. So she will put in some comments, some ideas, but then she will take a small group and work with them after the teaching. But what happens with that, the planning stage, is that she is crossing over with Mandarin with my English, which is fantastic. So say I'm teaching 2D shape, then she will teach them, pre-teach first in Mandarin, because we mostly have Mandarin learners in our school. So she will pre-teach that language. So they come to me and they'll shout out in Mandarin what it is, and I'll say it's a square, and then they can just bridge it really well like that. So it's a great program. She is like a bit of a mastermind in it. She's devised this program herself, but we also have you and Christopher working with us as well and giving us advice what to do. And we have conversations with parents early on about how Mandarin must be the key language at home, because we want them eventually to become bilingual. So the studies and research have shown that, okay, at this stage, the English level will be lower, but as they move up the school and into secondary school, they're going to have academic language in both languages, which is what we're really aiming for, So at home, they're encouraged to speak in Mandarin. They have home readers where we do like a guided read and then individual readers, but it's the same book for 2 weeks. So they practice a lot at home in Mandarin using that language with the book, come to us, we talk to them in English about it. So we're constantly crossing over with the languages. I bridge the language as much as I can. So I may be reading a book, and they're actually amazing at it as a class, because initially I come across the word and I'd say, oh, what's that in Mandarin, often to my LA. But now they're like, they all know it and they will say it. My LA will just confirm yes or no. So it's kind of quite interesting, because I'm learning language from them too, but they will interpret what I'm saying too, and they'll keep that bridging all the time to work things out, which is quite fantastic. It's just become very natural now. Often as well, like we really do accept that Mandarin is spoken in the class. We don't say it's an English only environment. We encourage them to speak English, but we don't pressurize them for it. Our LAs are very, very good. Often if a child will speak in Mandarin and they know that they can speak some English, they'll just reply back in English. and just keep it like that. So again, they're still hearing it, but I don't feel it's enforced. It's not a pressurized environment, which I think is really, really important at this stage. Of course, a lot of the children are coming in and they're just in the observation period, the silent period. And I think if you get that wrong, I think it can really upset their future ability and their confidence. So, I mean, we're in term 3 now, and I feel the program has worked really, really well this year. The kids are quite confident. The children who came in with absolutely no English can say basic phrases now. They certainly comprehend an awful lot.
Yeah. Yes, of course, because that comprehension comes first, even if they're not sort of confident enough to talk, that it will be there. Wow, that just sounds so great. And as you say, you're also being exposed to that language as well. And I'm guessing your daughter's going to be in a similar situation. She's going to be exposed to the dual languages as well.
Yeah, well, she absolutely loves Mandarin. She's got she's very, very good at it. She had a different program because I just started with this enrichment program when I started in reception. She had Chinese as a foreign language, so she was in pull out. I mean, this is why we wanted to change it, because they were pulling out children from reception to teach a very abstract, numbers to 10 and colours. I mean, it's worked for her because she loves languages, but I could see how some children wouldn't be motivated by that quite as much as our Mandarin speaking teacher going into their play and talking with them there and matching our curriculum. But yes, she loves it, and she corrects me all the time. But she won't use it herself. This is the frustrating aspect. I'm like, well, you say it then. So I think I'm hoping we'll go to the markets and I'll get her to start at least like buying fruit and things, start it off very easy. But she's a bit shy with it. But she teaches her grandma Mandarin, so.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Yes, I do think sometimes, certainly the children I've come across, they won't do it in front of their parents, but you listen to, have a little listen in the book corner or a little listen when they think nobody else, and suddenly it's like, oh, right, okay, so you do know. Yeah. Wow.
It's the same, isn't it, with kids speaking English? It's exactly the same. You hear them sometimes quietly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wow, it's just so interesting. And of course, the other interesting thing that you're doing is your research project, and that's supporting children who have very little or children who are got languages other than English. So could you just tell us a bit about that? What's all that about?
Well, I kind of noticed this year that children came in with less, lower levels of English than I experienced the previous year. And we don't know if that was how maybe my class was set last year. I had a lot of native speakers last year, or whether it was due to some shutdown we had with COVID the prior year. Kind of the situation with COVID here was we were shut down very briefly, but parents panicked, and I feel they kept their children in a lot more. They probably weren't exposed to what they were exposed to before, as in clubs and English groups and things. So I noticed they came in lower, and I was quite concerned. And it got to around Christmas, and I thought, well, they're still not what I remember the level of language was when I had my class previously. So I talked to my assistant head, and I said, I've spoken to my line manager. She will tell me things off the cuff, like she'll say, oh, I did this with this book and it worked really, really well. And I was like, fantastic, brilliant. And I just thought, well, I'm only learning from her giving me that one tiny incidental piece of knowledge. And she's just full of them, quite honestly. And I thought we really need to share this as a team and get this all written down, and then just devise a way we can teach like this next year. So we're on a brilliant start from the beginning. So we decided to do that, and we had a focus group with all the teachers and the LAs included. And just discussed what we'd seen. I told them the problem, and we tried to find solutions. And it was a great conversation. And to be honest, it was some of the nicest CBT I've ever had, because it was a very natural conversation. And I feel, again, I really wish we could afford more of these conversations. I mean, I am in an international school. We do still have like formal meetings and formal things we have to go to. But I would love to try and have more of these. So we decided we would do it monthly, and especially next year, because we're going to have more like Danish children come in, which is a different issue, because we've got to learn how to work with them with no English, no Chinese. So this has been a fantastic project to do with the team. Then I've kind of devised what we're going to do each term, and then I went back with that information to them, and we changed things around and talked about it more fully, got a few more ideas. So I can outline some of the things we found out if I think that'd be helpful to viewers. Yeah. Well, I've got an overview, but then we set into like term 1 what we try and do in term 2 and 3. So coming in, we've got some children that have no English. So we decided to choose very repetitive texts. And one that we found has worked really, really well this year is a Mouse and Me series. So it has, very key, simple phrases, and pictures of all the items, but also things they need to actually use, like, please and thank yous and can I have, just sentences like that. And so we found that absolutely fantastic. The kids absolutely loved reading those stories with us. And when we would say the lines, they would repeat them back, or they'd guess what it would be, because it's so repetitive. We also decided for term 1 to have a set of class books that we keep going over. Like first read would be for fun, second read vocabulary, third read would be questioning, fourth read acting out, maybe changing an ending, something like this, because I'm personally also quite bad at this, of flitting around books, because I think it's interesting to do that, but the children, I think, as they're EL learners, need multiple readings of it. So we'll be buying books for every class to have the same books with the same planning, and to do it in that way. We're using a lot of experiential learning. So the vocab and the phrases we use for that are like, they try food and smell and touch, and we had animals in as well for another experience. So the phrases, they're like, I like it, I don't like it. Well, they actually were, I dislike it, which I thought sounded even better. But it tastes sour, it tastes salty, it's spicy, it smells nice. Just, we found they wanted to use the vocab when they were doing something really fun with it, which is kind of how we've moved our whole curriculum this year. That generally, if it's adult led, it has to be really fun and really motivational. So we're going to continue with that, definitely. Lots of paired opportunities to talk. That I find that term 1 definitely with that, like less hands up, more talk to your partner. And then I try to go around at that point and get ideas, or hear the children that can speak it before saying, you tell me the answer. Because it's also building that confidence of using the language. We don't want to push them to a whole group experience until until they really know they can confidently say it. We're hoping to bring in photos of their home environment and culturally relevant artifacts, just things so they can come to the classroom and have a discussion point, which I think is show and tell kind of idea. Also, we try to repeat the phrases in lots of other contexts. So if they learn I like, then we'll use it in other ways as well. I like this book. I liked going here, those sort of things. We implement the hello song with feelings. This has worked very well this year, because again, they pick that up really naturally because they're doing it through song. Then at the end of the song, I would say, ask your partner, how are you today? And then they reply, because they'd learned that language from the song. So that's been wonderful. And we also have like the feelings pictures up as well, which they put their face on, and then they tell the adult they're feeling. So again, it's very basic language, but the children really are coming from point 0. So we start there and we build up with them. One wonderful thing our early years enrichment teacher did this year was make little class dictionaries. So they had to go around the class and find different things and then learn the word for it, like a stapler, scissors, paper. And then when we work with them, we do that narration where we're saying, oh, I see you're cutting with the scissors, this kind of just trying to use that language again, like in a relaxed way. So we're not saying, what's this? Tell me what this is. We do it just naturally with them. Also, when we do the talk phrases, we're very mindful of doing it in a small group initially, rather than, like I said, the whole class. Trying to also let the very low speakers of English, they will hear maybe 3 or 4 examples before it comes around to them, just to give them a little bit of confidence. Sometimes I'll actually just send all the rest away, and so that child isn't sitting there with all the peers watching them. And if they can't say, it's okay, and nobody needs to know about that as well. I'm really aware of their well-being when they've come to our class, basically, with very little English. Then we move like towards term 2. We start, because the English does start advancing after Christmas. We found quite a lot. We move from the Mouse and Me. They start to act those stories, like fully act them out. And then we move to helicopter stories, which has been a massive hit. We've had to give them some structure for that. So I did like the 3 Little Fishes and the Naughty Cat for the 3 Little Pigs. So just to give them some structured problem resolution kind of thing. And then they make the helicopter stories, but they can do that in English or Mandarin. And when we do helicopter stories, the Mandarin teacher's there with me. So she will often lead that, and then we will be translating for the native speakers of English, and then vice versa, which has worked really, really nicely, because then the very quiet children are getting up because they're doing it in their home language. So that's been quite a success this year. Our stories and our texts become more demanding by term 2 and 3. So there's more like vocab that we need to explain, which we try to do with TPR quite a bit. Photos, also just translating directly to Mandarin. And morning messages, we do that on a Monday, where it's every week the same kind of thing, that we're all, I went, and I use TPR with that, like I went to, I went with, and I went by, to describe their weekend. And we'll often do that with photos, but we keep that as a weekly thing because we want them to be able to speak in the past tense. Moving towards term 3, we'll move it to the future tense, like where will you go at the weekend? I will go to, because it's the went and the go to that is the biggest confusion. It's crazy. I mean, so, and then we're thinking also for term 3 to start introducing a word of the week, which Sesame Street does very well, I've heard. And so this is our complicated word of the week that we'll try and use in lots of different contexts. But overall, I think the main thing we're looking at is much more paired discussion. I think it's really, really important. Get them speaking as much as possible, because once they're off the carpet, they're generally speaking Mandarin. So on the carpet, we lots of paired discussion, even talking with the LA. We keep reinforcing sentences. So often you ask a question, you get one word. I know that's not just an EAL thing, though. I know children. So it's just like, oh, so you want to go and do, just rephrasing it back to them, not correcting them, but telling them back, or with the correct grammar. TPR as much as we can. Also, one trick we have is also when we release them to snack or play, we say, something we've been learning about. Like, for example, I was doing my class mascot, which is whales, and we did a big mind map about it. We did riddles. So I said, tell me one thing about a whale. So again, you go around the whole class and they're released that way to go, but then they all say a sentence. So in a nutshell, I think that's just about what we do. I will, if anyone is interested in this, I will type it up on my blog as well, because I think it could be helpful to a lot of schools, this kind of sequence. We've mostly done it this year, but next year this will be exactly the way we go from what we've learned from this year with them.
I just think that is brilliant. I mean, there are hundreds of ideas there, and I'm going to suggest that's not just for children who have English as an additional language. That is for all children. I can see there's lots of power for settling in. Wow, Jess, so many great ideas there. And as you've said, you've kind of worked together with your LA on that. So that's obviously changed your teaching, your pedagogy, hasn't it? So do you think that's a common thing maybe with teaching internationally, that you do have to kind of alter your pedagogy?
Definitely, 100%. It's just so important. I think any good teacher will totally adapt to their cohort, though. Like last year, for example, they were making books at this stage of the year, and I was helping them with that. And so it was a completely different class last year. So it really is just really noticing what comes in and then saying, right, we've got to support them the whole way up through the year. Let's do the best we can from this early start. I mean, next year I might have a totally different situation again, and we'll have to adapt some of these things. But I agree with you. I think a lot of these things work for young children too, because like my daughter's 6 and she's still, she says I courted and things like this. So, I think these, it's a natural thing. The English language is very difficult for native speakers too. So you're right, the native speakers really benefit from it too. And just their listening is obviously quite low at this age as well. So the repetition helps with that. I mean, another thing I forgot to say, like routine, we keep the same routines, we use the same words, get out your book bag, put in your water bottle. And often these instructions are displayed on like the whiteboard initially, or with actual objects, and I will do it so they can visually see what we're asking them to do as well. Visual timetable as well. I've used that throughout my career in England as well. With children with special needs, that helps especially, but they're very clear of understanding the sequence of the day and what's expected of them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I love a visual timetable. And I always say, as an adult, we do to-do lists, we write things down. It's no different for children, is it? They need that sort of, and even if they're very, very competent, they're very confident, it's nice to know that that's there. And it's sort of, as long as it's being used and it's kept up to date and it's current, then, that's just a great little, just a touchstone, just to double check what's going on and when is home time. We all need that, don't we? We check our watches to make sure when home time is, Yeah, visual. I love visual timetables. Wow, just absolutely fascinating. So that's what you're doing. There must be people now watching who are saying, do you know what, that just sounds fantastic, that would suit me to a T. So how do you start that? I mean, what advice would you have for people who would be interested in maybe teaching internationally?
I would say first look up on Facebook, all the groups that are on Facebook. There's international school teachers, there's teachers on the move with children. There's an array of them now. There's my one, new to international teaching. So I would go first on something like that. So you can just start to read what people are writing. You can post a question. I mean, like my board, I sped up specifically for people who were considering going, because I could sometimes feel, and I hate this with Facebook, that on these massive boards, somebody posts a question and then you get a bit of a nasty retort back, like, that's very naive, or, and I just say that on my board is just like it is in the classroom. It's just based on kindness, and anyone is unkind, it's not happening, like I won't let you on it. You can't do that. You've got to just take everybody's question as a serious question. It's worrying that person. So, I mean, just put a question out, anything you're worried about. I have a website too, so there's a very basic guidance there on the steps to go, what I did, like, because you generally now it's through TES is an excellent way of finding jobs. You can just scope through there. That's how I found all my jobs. But there's a lot of recruitment agencies as well, and they're very nice people, very helpful. A number of them are actually free, and they'll help you with things like creating a CV. They offer webinars and all sorts of things. So you just join them and they support you on the journey too. So if you do decide that's what you want to do after that kind of research, then if you find a school, my biggest tip would be really research the country. Is it going to be somewhere you'll be happy to live? The culture, especially. Does it have everything you want and need? I mean, like in Egypt, we had no foreign foods, really.
Really?
And there wasn't supermarkets full of the things we have here, which is crazy because we're so much further away. Vietnam was by far the best country because they have great links with France, so French wine, baguettes, and cheese, and very cheap, and huge stores for foreign goods. So if you think you're going to need that link to the UK, then I would check a country on those sort of basis. Check the expat community. Is it big enough for you? That Taiwan has a very small community. That's something I didn't really research at the beginning. Vietnam, a very big community from people from all different walks of life. And also, most importantly, if you know it's the school you want, and I would really, really research the school. Again, go on Facebook, just put it out. Is anybody working at the school? Could you please DM me? Ask them the questions you want to know. Because we, international teachers, I do think we really stick together. And if we're in a school that isn't great, we will be honest, because you don't want somebody else to go through that. And vice versa, if you're schooling a great school, people will really, wax lyrical about it. So just really do your research. But I would say to anyone, especially if you're young, I was in my 20s when I went out, just go for it. Like, you can always go home again. My friends went home because they had a child they wanted to bring back to their grandfather. He got a really great job in an almost EAL school, and he was picked for that reason because he'd been abroad. And now in the UK, I think there is a big percentage of EAL children, so it can be a real string to your bow, so to speak. Like, it can be a real advantage. Go for it. That's what I would say.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think that's really interesting at the beginning when you were talking about the challenges. And as you said there, but actually it's a challenge, but it can be a benefit as well. So that is just great advice. Thank you very much. So you have a Facebook platform. Tell us what it's called. Where can we find you as well? Tell us all about yourself, Jess.
So the Facebook platform is new to international school teachers, really, really long title, but there are so many international teachers, some with full stops, some without. I thought I'll just set it apart, and it's clear then it really is for people who are new. But on that site too, there's veteran teachers on there. There's a lot of my friends that have signed up to help and support. So you are going to get good answers and from nice people. I have a website which is jessgoslingearlyyearsteacher.com, and that's about me as well, but there is a section on international teaching. There's a blog as well, and I also put a lot of CPD on there that I've done internationally and links to it, so a lot of it's free yourself. And it's really useful for people who are looking for EYFS CPD. I also have a link on there for EYFS resources like games and everything like that, so it's a useful site even if you're not internationally teaching. And I'm also on Teacheroo, which is a new app. I'm not sure if you've heard of that yet. So they gave me my own little platform on there. So again, if you feel that you would like to join something where you could have more of a two-way conversation with people and get immediate answers, and I think especially for when people are moving or have moved and they're starting to feel a bit worried, a bit anxious, it might be nice to be on like a chat forum there. So I would always be present on that. I can tip into that whenever people talk. So there's about 65 people on there at the minute, so it's doing quite well. But yeah, that's another platform I'm on too.
And of course you've got a book as well. Tell us about your book. What's going to be in that?
That I'm hoping just going to be a how-to guide. There are a couple of texts around at the minute, but they're quite chunky academic texts. So I'm hoping mine will be a bit more like my TS articles, just a little bit more sharper and to the point, because especially when I moved abroad, I didn't want to read a lot of information to find out what I needed. So it will talk about the recruitment companies, and I will name them, how to succeed at your interviews, how to find out about your school, different methods I've used to ensure it's a great school, how to settle, what to do with if you have to have a trailing, have to isn't a great word, but if you are bringing a trailing spouse, that's a massive consideration too. So I hope it will be like a quick guide for people who want a bit of help, a bit of support at the beginning, because when I first went out, I was completely unaware of everything. There was no information out there. There are blogs and things you can read, and I do recommend that too. Have a look around at blogs, but I think it's nice sometimes to have all the information in one place. So I hope that will help people, and I hope also my Facebook page will cross over. So if there's a question from the book, I can answer it at the Facebook page.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea. And actually, that's a really good point about a spouse or a partner going out with you as well, isn't it? That if you've got it in a book form, you can actually sit together and say, right, well, what do you think about this? And that can then start some of those conversations which will need to be had before you even think about going for an interview, isn't it?
Definitely. And even children, children are huge. Yes. You've got to be checking your school even for that. It's not just looking as a teacher, but you're looking as your child in the school too. So yeah, I'll be covering those things in it. Yeah.
Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, there's some gorgeous photos as well on your blog of the sorts of places that you've been and the wonderful things that you've seen. It's just inspirational just reading that. If you've not heard anything from today, just go and have a look at the blog. It is just fabulous. Yeah. Wow, Jess, you're doing so many interesting things, and thank you so much for sharing that on your blog and sharing it with us today as well. It's just so interesting, and I would be really interested to see how that action research pans out next academic year as well, when you get your next cohort in. That's going to be really interesting. But for the moment, thank you so much for coming on the Early Years Summit and talk about international teaching. Fabulous.
It's been lovely to chat with you. Really nice.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And I look forward to welcoming everybody to the next session on the Early Years Summit, all about speech, language and communication.